What a game. You talk about playing 40 minutes. And that was what you thought it would take to take down number one Purdue. And that is exactly what happened. This was not a sneak by them type of victory. Nebraska, again, ended up with an 88-72 victory. A lot of that powered by a 13-0 run to end the first half. Went up 11. Purdue fought back. Of course, you knew they were going to. Eventually, an 11-0 run by Nebraska gets them to a 65-52 lead in the second half. A lot of that sparked by C.J. Welcher. I should mention the first half run, a lot of it sparked by Hoiberg. They were both involved in each run, I believe. And just overall, what an outstanding performance for Nebraska. First win over a number one team in 42 seasons for Nebraska, 1982 at Missouri, and the first win at home in 60 seasons against number one team, 1964 Michigan. So with all this pandemonium going on, it should be included. This is not your normal Nebraska basketball team. After tonight's victory, this is what I would call a program changer. I know Northwestern has beaten Purdue. I know Fairleigh Dickinson, the 16th seed, knocked off this Purdue team. So there might be some second guessing that, but boy, just you think about everybody involved. You think about Nebraska basketball fans who have been starving. And again, I don't want to get to the point where I'm saying this is automatically a successful season, but I mean, just from here, it just feels like there are so many opportunities. And Nebraska, again, takes down the number one team in the nation. It's a team against Purdue. You're not going to play them again. Seems like Coach Hoiberg, I know Derek Walker was in the house tonight and watching the game. He had a good game against Edey last year. Nebraska should have beat this Purdue Boilermaker team last year. Kind of have a kryptonite for player of the year, Zach Edey. Apparently, whether it's Derek Walker or Rink Mast filling in, playing a spectacular game, and man, is he going to be tired. That is a lot of effort that you have to put in to try to muscle against Zach Edey, and was doing so well. Edey airballed two hook shots in the first half. You could see Edey getting frustrated as the game went on. Nebraska, of course, was much like their game against Wisconsin, willing to give up some shots and not allow Edey to take over. It's interesting because Northwestern did the opposite of that. They let Edey eat. And so, I mean, you pretty much got to choose one way or the other when you're taking on this Purdue team. Nebraska said, okay, let's welcome to a shootout. This was certainly a shootout. Both teams having over 13 threes per game. I think Nebraska finished with 14 and Purdue with 13. I can double check that here in a second, but just a wonderful performance. And once again, you talk about a team that needed not just 40 minutes, but how about a contribution from just everybody that played tonight? I mean, Mass, like I said, had his minutes. I can go through everybody. Gary had his minutes. Tamanaga was ready to take the building down. Bryce Williams with 2 blocks there at the end. The man almost had a triple-double, 9 points, 9 assists, 11 rebounds. Sam Hoiberg, talk about just an absolute spark off the bench. Wilcher, the same thing. And then Josiah Alec, that corner three. I don't know if that was one of those, no. Oh, well, okay, I guess that'll work. And he hits it. Jamarcus Lawrence, the only one that I would say didn't have necessarily a moment in this game, but he still, as with Lawrence throughout any game, a lot of effort. He finished with 0 points on 2 shots, 2 bunnies he maybe was able to hit. But, you know, for him, still nothing taken away because this was a complete team effort. As I can now go through some of the stats here. Keisei Tamanaga finishes with 19 points, 4 assists, 5 of 9 shooting for deep. He led Nebraska with 5 threes. Nebraska overall 14 of 23 from deep, 61% from beyond the arc. Absolutely incredible number. Once again, Purdue trying to match that 13 of 33, 39.4% from beyond the arc. Hey, that's pretty darn good too. And it's pretty close to what they normally do. But Nebraska was able to hit one more. And you know, it's just kind of interesting to break down how this goes as we have Erick Strickland calling in. He will join us here in just a second. Only a few more free throws for Nebraska. They hit 16 of 19, though. Again, something that's hurt Hoiberg teams in the past, not hitting free throws. This team definitely can do that. That was to a tune of 84% tonight. Just absolutely incredible from a fan perspective, from a journalist perspective, to watch this, to see still the crowd going crazy. And now we have Erick Strickland join us on the Hoops Post Game Show. Strick, Heck of a victory, knocking off the #1 team, Purdue. What are your initial thoughts, as I'm sure there's still pandemonium going on down at Pinnacle Bank Arena?
Man, it was crazy. I just left. I'm on the way back to the station right now. And boy, oh boy. I mean, there were moments when you kind of, you're gritting your teeth. You were worried a little bit. But boy, did they come up big and have some big shots, make some big plays, whether it be on the defensive side or on the offensive side. They came to play tonight. What a rebound from, going on the road, playing well. Now, they didn't play bad in Wisconsin, but going on the road, coming up short, and bouncing back with a huge victory against the #1 team in the country, the Purdue Boilermakers. Man, the intensity, it was loud. Boy, you just hate that the weather was the way it was, because that Pinnacle Bank would have seriously been rocking had the weather not been so bad. It would have been a full house, but they still turned out and they shouted loud and proud for the Huskers tonight.
Yeah, I was at the game too, and noticed that the 300 section probably hit a little bit by the sandstorm or the snowstorm, excuse me, and then students not maybe being quite back to campus at 8 o'clock tip. I mean, all those things factoring into a Nebraska basketball team that, basketball fan base that usually does pack the house. Well, I bet it'll be packed moving forward. There's major momentum in the program, and it's going to be important for Nebraska to celebrate this one and get ready for the next game against Iowa, another 8:30 tip. We could talk later in the show about what that means and how to do that and how to come off a big, energy type of performance like this. But for now, we can step back and get excited about this victory. Strick, what does this do? We know about, Nebraska's resume, getting a victory against a #1 team like Purdue can't be taken away. Big picture, I think this is a program-moving win. What say you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. I was talking to a couple of the coaches in the hallway afterwards, and that's exactly what I said. This is big, not just for the game or a quad one victory. It's big for the program as a whole. And so that's what you love to see about it, is that they came together, fought for it, battled for it, and even when Purdue would make their runs, they kept fighting and they got back into it and was able to pull it out. So you got to just be proud for the program, because they're still now what a lot of people miss is this team is still young. They're still a young team. I mean, outside of losing Keisei Tamanaga, obviously is a big loss for them because he was huge tonight. Outside of losing him and a few others, you still get Mass back. You still Blaine gets one game, so they get a good portion of their quarterback, and then you add an up-and-coming Eli Rice and the likes of them. C.J. Wilson, who was huge for them tonight. You're also going to get them back. So for the program, it's huge because a lot of people are going to wake up and see that the Huskers came through and had a big win in a big way. Not just squeak by. They beat them and beat them really good and handily.
Yeah, that's what makes this interesting. It's like what this path is opens up for Nebraska moving forward of what this season's going to look like. Because I think with this team, until proven otherwise, it was kind of like last year where you're 500, maybe you can do better. You have a soft schedule, and then it's kind of this feeling of maybe 500 in the league. This wakes you up. And I mean, you played two ranked opponents, didn't have particularly good games, wasn't particularly close against Creighton or Wisconsin. Like you said, didn't play poorly against Wisconsin. They were just hitting everything. Nebraska matches that hitting everything tonight against Purdue. But overall, I mean, this is, again, just ramifications everywhere. When you look at the Big Ten now this year, I don't think you any longer are thinking, well, I hope they scrap for 500. This is a type of victory that makes you think that this team is different than Nebraska basketball teams past, maybe even the one of 10 years ago that did have to wait till no-sit Sunday to punch their ticket in and get that 11 seed against Wisconsin. I mean, this opens up the possibility that if you take care of business from here on out, you're about the fifth best team in the Big Ten. Who knows? I don't want to limit what they can do, but just say that. They'd probably be pretty comfortable getting in. We won't have to be sweating it if it comes down to on the bubble. Now, certainly I'm getting way ahead of myself, but this just feels like an elevating, a win that elevates them, like we said, even beyond the program. As Strick is joining me in studio now. as we celebrate this big victory. It's 10:14. We got some shows in the morning, but I don't care. We might stay here till
to the break of dawn.
Yeah, might welcome in early break in when they get back. But again, now we got to talk about the environment, the crazy impact of that victory. Now let's just kind of get into a specific. I'd like to ask you, Strick, your player of the game. There's a lot of guys to choose from.
Yeah, there's so many guys to choose from because I think there was a time for each of them, right? It wasn't just one person. It wasn't just one play. It wasn't just one run. I would have to say one person that I was looking for to continue to remain in his role, and that was C.J. Wilcher. I think C.J. Wilcher was huge for them because when things was kind of now don't get me wrong, Keisei Tamanaga was big, hit some big shots, but down the stretch, when things were kind of it was just teetering on the brink, you're down, they're up 7, it's under double digits, you're kind of like, ugh, and then is a turnover, but they got the stops. Like, even when they made the bad play or got the turnover or bad shot or a missed shot, maybe, like a couple times, Gary had a couple at the basket, couple times, a great backdoor cut and Bryce Williams gets hung under the basket. And you go back on the other side, but Bryce then gets a great block on Zach Edey, who was point blank at the rim at 7-3. So they made great plays, man. Just even got the stops when they needed to get the stops. So I want to shout out and just go outside the box and look at C.J. Wilcher tonight.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. A great observation. He's very comfortable in that role that he's in now. You can tell he's going out there looking for a shot, and he believes every shot he's taking is going to go down that corner 3. No hesitation.
Yeah, coming off the screen, fading into the corner, and no, like you said, no hesitation, and was very confident. It's like he's worked on this stuff. He's now taking and getting the shots that you can tell he's worked on. He's understanding the offense. He's knowing where his shots are going to come from. And he's knocking them down now with confidence.
Well, and then you could see him at the top when he took that bump, got the foul. You could tell the respect's there. They were trying to chase him down, obviously, because of what he'd been doing. And then knocking those down at the line. Not everybody was perfect from the line tonight, but again, it continues this season-long thing where Nebraska now is pretty darn good from the free throw line. And if you're Wilcher, he's darn near 90%, I think.
Well, yeah, and you knew they were going to be. You knew it was a great night when probably someone hasn't really gotten the shots and Josiah Alec is in the corner on a great deep penetration. They kick it out to him. I think it was Rink Mass. Kicks it out to him to the corner, and he confidently takes that shot and hits it. That's a huge shot for them because, again, Purdue was consistently making little runs. And that's what we've learned about this Nebraska team is they've gotten better at figuring out how to stop and cancel runs. So then you started seeing them attack. You started seeing them set better screens tonight, which I was worried about in the past, but they were putting bodies on guys tonight, which was getting guys open, and guys were then having to hold. So they were going to the free throw line. And then, as you said, I've always talked about free throws. It can either get you back into a game. This is what I talked about on the block a little bit earlier. I said free throws can either get you back into the game. They can extend the lead when you have a lead, or they can win the game when it counts. And that's what it did. They operated on all cylinders as far as the free throws were tonight.
Yeah, ultimately, Nebraska 16 of 19 again from the line. That's going to help you get the victory here. I did want to say one thing because it's interesting. First of all, this is the Hoops Postgame Show brought to you by Action Plumbing, Heating, AC, and Electrical. I'm Jake Bachman alongside the Husker Hall of Famer, Erick Strickland. And
Coach Rule was in the building.
And Coach Rule, you saw him there?
He got him hyped. Coach Rule was in the building.
I didn't see him.
Got a chance to shake his hand a little bit. And they put the camera on him kind of late in the game, probably about like 2 or 3 minutes left. It was a timeout. And Coach Rule kind of started getting the crowd going, and they got hyped.
Well, that's what I mean.
So it was good.
That's what gets you excited. Whether it's hoops, volleyball, football, we know if you start, and it's not like this is not a bad statement, but if you start winning, Husker fans will show up.
They will.
And that's what I expect. Again, maybe not the most impressive crowd, I suppose, Yeah, I think we had a hot mic issue with the BTN crowd saying, yeah, we're a little disappointed by the crowd, but it is what it is. Excuse me, not BTN. I don't want to call them out. It was Peacock tonight.
Yeah,
so
Peacock. Yeah.
There's plenty of people also complaining about being on Peacock. That's fine. I don't care what you throw you on the CW network. I don't care if you beat Purdue, you beat the number one team, have your biggest victory in such a long time.
Yeah.
But it does bear the question, and I did want to ask you this. They have lost to Northwestern. They lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, the number 16 seed last year, and the second team of all time to do that. Does that take away any part of this upset? Is that the number one team's a little bit vulnerable in the past to upsets?
No, it's Austin and I were looking at the we did Teach Tape Tuesday on the block. Every Tuesday we do what they call Teach Tape Tuesday, and part of that was looking at the recipe. And we know that Northwestern was one of the others to do it when they went into Northwestern to play them. Northwestern played very similar style to the way that Nebraska did. Their game plan was very similar to what they had with Indiana. But what I loved about it is they were very physical. They didn't relinquish any space to Zach Edey, and they were hard on the double teams. Like they didn't come as soft as they did against the last game they played out in Wisconsin with Krall. Even though they shut Krall down too, he only had 9 points. He didn't even get in the double figures. But Tyler hurt us a little bit with his athleticism. But I will say they came strong, hard, physical, and they didn't let Zach Edey have much space, and he struggled again tonight.
And it was, again, the defensive performance for Nebraska.
Shout out to Ring Mass.
The plan was, Ring Mass. I was mentioning it earlier. Just talk about, and you've guarded Yao Ming. So, I mean, Zach Edey's 7'4". He's basically the college version of Yao Ming, I suppose. How much is one, like I was watching, and I got some pretty good seat shots to my buddy. So it was pretty close to the floor. And I was just watching the amount of energy it takes Rink Mass to defend. Because it's not just the straight up, like, just banging with Edey, which would be enough. And he's got to do a lot of that. But the rotations that he has to do and everybody has to do, it's just, it's a lot to ask from him.
Yeah. Getting out on the pick and rolls, getting back, then getting back to body, then block, and then trying to run. But what was good, too, is he shot the ball good early. Couple big threes early. Then, he's got to come out a little bit now. He can't just kind of sit back and in the paint. And that's why that shot by Josiah Alec was huge, too, because now you're like, good gosh, we've got to really get out on everybody. And when everybody's hitting like that for the Huskers, they're very dangerous. And shout out to them and their preparation, their focus. They came very honed in on the game plan. It was shaky earlier because of turnovers, but they got it figured out in the second half.
Yeah, both teams had a little bit of ball handling issues at times, and it was just an opportunity. I mean, Juwan Gary, especially early in that half, the first half, absolute hustle play to get another possession for Nebraska, diving at midcourt after Nebraska pretty much doesn't allow Purdue to go, get a good look at the bucket. He goes and just grabs, they weren't going to get a look one way or the other, but he said, you know what? I'm not giving up on this ball. I'm just going to go take it so they don't get a shot at all. And he had, high energy blocks. I mean, he gave his usual self tonight. But this was insane. Obviously, again, coming off that win that loss, that disappointing performance. You gave up a lot of points. You've said it before. This is a team that you like to hit 70, 71, or what's the point that you kind of think Nebraska can win with? Because tonight they had 88.
Nebraska
well above it.
Is 19 now. They were 18 when they won their last game at home against Indiana. They're 19-1 when they score over 80 points.
Under Hoiberg?
And it's like 25-4 total if you go back to the total of his years. Yeah. So that I've always said them getting up and above in the upper 70s, they're with the way that they play and the style and the defense that they play, they're always going to give themselves a chance. And they got over 80 tonight. And listen, shut it down. That's what's different about this team, Bach. This team is so uniquely different because they have the ability to execute better than they have in the past. In the past, you had to wonder where the shot was going to come from, or you think you knew it was going to come from Bryce, or you knew it was going to come from Verge. Somebody's going to try to do something or go one-on-one. They don't have to do that. So they're very poised at running their stuff, running their cuts, understanding what the defense is trying to do to them, and then executing and finishing it off. And they did that.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy like multiple options to go to. Bryce Williams is always good on an ISO. If you run some pick and roll or something with him, Rink Mass, they went through several times in the post.
Saw the
Varying
mismatches.
success. Yep.
Like that's different. Like there's been times in the past where they would get a mismatch and they would have no clue that the mismatch was there. But they found a couple times, they found Mass with the guard on him. He finishes it off. That's different about this team, man. And I said it before that this team is different. I know a lot of people didn't believe me, but earlier in the season, they're like, oh, I don't know, man. There's a bunch of naysaying. I just said this team is built different. I've got a chance to watch them, and watching the way that they play and the way that they play defense, I said this team is different.
Well, and to be fair, I'm a longtime Nebraska basketball fan. I feel like I hear that every year too, because you want to believe, you want to say this is the team, but that's what kind of makes this win so special, is not just for the long-standing Husker fan that's been there and cheering this team on, because I always say this about Nebraska basketball. You're not necessarily in it for the glory, at least not the last couple decades. And for Coach Hoiberg, I mean, it's been a heavy dose of frustration for Nebraska when you just kind of if you go back, pair the Frost and Hoiberg excitement for when they were coming in, and then obviously the Frost thing's over, just didn't work. The Hoiberg thing is, going into last year, you just felt like you got to get to 500. The heartbeat's still there, but how much belief is there? And that's why, I mean, this would completely change it. You mentioned the young roster. And the fact that so many of these guys can come back. I got questions off the text line asking if this team will be in the top 25. It just is changing where Nebraska is now and where Nebraska projects in the future.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And one of the things I think about as well is when they show up on the court, they're actually better than some teams. Like in the past, like the top tier teams, I could actually go back and look at the Indiana game and I said, they're actually better than Indiana. When's the last time you really could say that, right?
Yeah, about Indiana.
I mean, about them in Indiana. Like, you could, watching them on the floor, you could say, this team is actually better than Indiana. And I believe the same thing for Iowa. Now, they can't come in and lay an egg. I mean, celebrate, be happy, be excited, go down to the rail or whatever you're going to do, on a night until, I think school's about to start again, or it has started again. But enjoy it. Enjoy the moment. It's a huge moment. I think it's been since 1984 since they beat a number one team.
Yeah, it's 1982 Missouri.
82 Missouri.
42 years ago.
42 years ago.
And as far as winning one at home, 60 years Nebraska fans have waited to beat a number one team at home. I mean, when we talk about rarefied air and why we're so excited about this victory is it's just a historic victory for Nebraska. And in addition, sometimes Nebraska, and I tell a quick story is that the reason why I'm on air right now is went to broadcasting. So I was in print journalism back in like 2010, I think it was, or somewhere around then. And Nebraska faced Texas, who was number 2 at the time, but the number 1 team had lost. So they were basically the number 1 team. And I got the chance to call the game. I just signed up for something. I was in college. And just after doing that, Nebraska beat them. It was the most fun I ever had. I said, you know what? I'm doing broadcasting. So, these are the type of moments that could change your whole life up and kind of where you had. So hopefully whoever's calling for KRNU had probably a heck of a time tonight. Yeah. Anybody involved there, it's going to be something that you just don't forget. And kind of to what I was going to ask you earlier is Rick Mass. I mean, again, Zach Edey, he might, I don't know if he's going to go on to be a recognizable name to Rick Mass kids for what he does in the NBA, but what he can say is I matched up against a reigning defending national player of the year and ate his lunch at times and ultimately had was a big part, instrumental part in winning. I mean, he can give the grandkids the stats and show them what he did to the player. You got a game like that you kind of go back and just say, you know what? That was that's something that people are going to be impressed with if I lay that number out.
I mean, listen, as a freshman, playing in big time basketball in the Big 8 at the time, and a really good Missouri team comes into Devaney, and as a freshman, I at the time had the freshman scoring record for freshmen at 28 points, and it was just one of those games where I was just on fire. There's just nothing I could. Couldn't throw up that didn't go in. Yeah. Felt like CJ Wilcher tonight. Just, right. Just everything I shot was the whole of the basket was just huge. And I was just make it everything. So that was a memorable time. And then obviously going into the NIT and having that run at Madison Square Garden was it was a thrilling, exciting experience as well.
Yeah, I could imagine being a named MVP at Madison Square Garden. That's probably something you don't forget too easily. But speaking of just, feeling like you could anything, Casey Tamanaga, let's take a quick break. We'll talk a little bit more Casey and this Husker basketball victory, because Casey, as we saw last year, started getting on a heater and it changed where Nebraska could go with that group. He's starting to look like that guy.
An old guy, yeah.
So we'll talk a little bit about that. Of course, obviously the big victory, Nebraska takes down number 1 Purdue. Nebraska is the story in college basketball tonight with an 88-72 victory down at Pinnacle Bank Arena.